She's
Wow.
in Canada. She has 2 sons. One son already working in US in Texas. And she has a younger one called Kevin. And also we have a youngest Ji Yuan. Her daughter is only 5 months old, and she is my client and a lovely baby, but I didn't get a chance to see her since the quarantine. I never get a chance to see. And also Meng is we come from same alumni university.
Cool.
And Yi, this baby boy, ha ha, hi, ha ha. He's eating by himself. He looks like a mom.
So cute.
Remember, mom get pregnant. We go to check out the house. We stay there for 1 month. For 1 hour. The seller just sells the house to us.
Oh, so great.
Oh, this is a lot of my, and Jin Zhang is so many years I know her. And Grace is my community friend, and also has a daughter-in-law of my teenager friends. That's so that's from all different one from the communities.
Cool. That's so awesome. It's good to see everybody.
Yeah, let me see what time we still have more people. Maybe we wait a little bit.
Sure.
Hi, Huang Huang, how are you? Huang Huang is from Los Angeles.
I'm doing great. I just had a run at the Santa Monica beach. The beach just opened for the kind of running and walking and swimming and kind of activities. So I'm sorry, it looks like everybody is so dressed up and put together. I'm just
no, even dressed up, maybe only the upper body.
Don't stand up.
Yeah, don't stand up.
Don't stand up. Yeah, thank you for organizing this. Thank you for inviting us. Yeah.
No, this is great because I just feel the story of Bethany is like a movie. It's not real. I mean, especially for our community, for most of younger generations, they are the only kids in the family because China only allowed 1 kid for each family. And for me, I'm also one with I don't have any siblings. So since I'm a teenager, I just swear if I have a chance to have 2 kids, I definitely wanted 2 because I'm so lonely. Now I have 2. I want 4. It's too late. And people maybe only have 2 kids already struggling with quarantine at home. You have 4, so we definitely want to hear your story.
I'm excited to share. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we were thrilled to have you. Okay, so maybe I will start. Right now the time is 7:05. And first, I like to introduce Jim Urban. Jim is my coworker, and we belong to a same of realtor group called By Referral Only. That's Jim. Jim is with hot balloons on his background. And we belong to By Referral Only, which have over 100 realtors within US and Canada. And our coach is Joe Stump. He told us a lot regarding, as a realtor, how we help our community, help our client, what our client really need. So that's what we need to provide to them. That's during this quarantine, Jim already organized one of the Zoom meetings just like this, but he has multiple speakers. The title is How to Thrive Daily During the Quarantine. And Bethany is one of his daughters. She is the first one to talk. I just love the talk, and also other ones maybe we can share with everyone. So when I hear the talk of Bethany, how she can handle with one of the 2 years old, then have a 5 years old, 8 years old, and 10 years old. I just feel, oh, I wanted to invite her to share her how to care of herself and to our community, so all moms can learn what take care of ourselves first, then we can smile using the smile eyes face our kids, not angry eyes or very frustrated eyes. That's not the way to teach our kids or parenting. So Jim, can I talk too much? Jim, can you introduce yourself and how you raise Bethany and other 3 daughters? Jim has 4 daughters.
Aw.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I don't want to take too much of the thunder away from Bethany here, but thank you, Catherine, for having me. I appreciate it. And thank you for organizing this. I know everybody's excited to hear Bethany. And Bethany is my oldest daughter of 4 daughters, and I actually have 10 grandchildren, by the way. And
Oh.
Bethany has 4 of them. And she's my oldest daughter. And I'm so excited to hear from her because she did such a great job on my Zoom event. And I know that she was the highlight of that Zoom event as well. So I know that's why you were excited to have her. And she's just such a sunshine of a daughter. She's amazing. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bethany. And Catherine, unless you have something else to say.
Bethany, it's yours. I will put you as a host because as a mother of 4, I really know she has a limited time. We never do any rehearsal. I just want to squeeze this 1 hour, squeeze all the good juice from her. So I will put her as a host so that way she can share all the material she prepared for us.
Thank you. You are so kind. I'm so honored. I feel so lucky to be here. Everybody seems so sweet and wonderful. And I don't feel like I'm an expert by any means, but I am grateful for the chance to talk. Catherine, thank you. And you said she wanted me to share some photos. So let's see if this works. I'm going to try to share my screen, I guess, here. Oh, cool. I've never done this before. All right, let's try this. All right. How does it look? Do you see my Instagram?
Great. Yes, we
Yeah.
saw you and your husband. And the
Oh,
cookies.
good. Oh, good. Okay. So I've had a website in the past. I am a photographer, but I don't have a website anymore because I'm not doing a lot of photography. I'm not taking a lot of clients, but this is my personal Instagram page where I just share I share pictures of my family and my kids and just talk about life and holidays and the ups and downs of being a mom. And so this is my Instagram page, and you can find me there at Bethany Jackman. And I do have a photography, I have a photography one, and I thought I pulled it up. It's Bethany Jackman Photography. And I sometimes will take clients, and so I'll share some of my work there. And I love photography so much, but I am focusing on my kids a lot more right now. So it's fun. It's a fun job. It's a good job to, let's see if I can stop sharing my screen. There we go. It's a fun job, and it's a really good mom job because I can take clients when I need to, but I'm also blessed to not have to work currently. I'm mostly a stay-at-home mom, and my husband works full-time. And so that's a blessing for our family. And I'll tell you a little bit about us if you'd like to learn a little bit about me and my family. We live in Denver, Colorado, actually a suburb called Aurora. So we're in Colorado. And my husband and I grew up in Colorado. So we actually met in middle school when we were in
Wow.
7th grade.
Wow, sweetheart.
But we didn't date until we were like seniors in high school. So we were about 17 years old when we dated. And then we went to college, and he served a 2-year mission for our church. And then when he came home, we got married. So we got married. We've been married about 14 years, and we have 4 kids. Our oldest, Noah, is 10. We have Lucy, who is 8. Penny is 5, almost 6, and Levi is 2. So they keep us busy for sure. We have lived in Utah and Texas and Boston, Massachusetts. And then we made it back to Colorado because we love it here so much. And I'll say that I don't think I'm an expert necessarily in self-care or in positive parenting, but I love learning about it. I love learning about self-care and self-help, and I love learning about positive parenting. So I'm excited to share just a little bit about that. And after I talk a little bit about self-care, I would be glad to take any questions. And I can even check in the chat. Oh, good. Someone lived in Colorado. That's so awesome. We love it here. So I'll answer some questions, so you can jot down some notes. Feel free to save your questions, and I would love to answer any questions you have. And I have my own notes here too. I wanted to say that, okay, so when it comes to, let's see, I was gonna say that in school, my kids are taught to have a growth mindset when it comes to their schoolwork. And I totally think that this applies to us as adults too. You know, like we should continually be learning and growing, and we can say, oh man, I may have had a really bad day, or dang, I really messed up in that situation with my kids, but that's okay. I'm gonna try again harder. I'm gonna try again tomorrow. And so that's my growth mindset, is that even when I make mistakes, I can keep trying and growing and trying to be better, because of course we're not perfect, and that's okay. And life can be really hard and messy, especially right now during this pandemic. I think we've all struggled with our emotions and our mental health, or it's been a hard challenge for a lot of us, and we're all going through different things. And so, but it's okay. Like we're all just trying our best, and it's okay to keep trying and to keep moving forward. And I believe that we're capable of so much as parents and as humans. You know, like I believe that we all have a unique purpose in this world. Like every one of you has a special and unique purpose, and you're all you're supposed to be where you are right now, and you're supposed to be the mom or the dad to your kids. Like you're supposed to be their parent, and there's a purpose. And so I believe that we have a special power, that we can be an influence for good in our homes and in our communities. And I also believe that it's possible to live like a really full and happy life no matter our circumstances. And I also believe in seeking for joy. So where do we begin? And I think that one place that we can begin is with our own personal self-care, because if we take care of ourselves, then we can more easily take care of the people that we love and our children. I think as mothers, we all naturally put our kids first. That's just such a natural thing. And we love them, and we sacrifice so much for them. But sometimes I notice that if I haven't been taking care of myself, I turn into kind of an overtired, overworked, more unhappy mommy. And I think a lot of you can relate. So if any of you have ever read self-help books or listened to some self-help podcasts, you can probably relate to the fact that we need to take care of ourselves. And I don't believe it has to be big or expensive or time consuming. It doesn't have to look like, you know, getting our nails done or going on a big fancy vacation. And there's nothing wrong with those things. I think that sometimes it's good to go on a little getaway or get our nails done. But I think self-care needs to be simple, everyday little things. So self-care to me looks like creating a daily routine for myself. And I may not always be able to stick to it perfectly, but I can at least try. It's really nice to have kind of a routine. And so I love to write it out and type it out. And I think about what are my priorities and what things bring me joy and what are my hobbies or my interests or my talents and how can I squeeze those into my daily life and fill my bucket, you know? So I'll show you some examples. Like recently when when quarantine started and the pandemic started and school was canceled, everything changed, right? Like our whole routine had to change. And so I created a routine. Now I have one that I'll show you that was from a long time ago, and my daughter put some stickers on it, but it just says Bethany's daily routine. I don't know if you can see that. And it's all bent and crinkled because it hung in my bathroom. So I could always see it. And then when this quarantine happened, I created this little one and it says Happy Mommy at the top. Because I was like, I need a routine and I need to find time in my day to take care of myself so that I can be a happy mommy. So here are some of the things that fill my bucket. And as I'm describing those things, you might think about what kinds of things fill your bucket, small and simple things that you can do every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. So my routine includes, first of all, I try to get up 1 to 2 hours before my kids are up. So it's usually just an hour. It's usually just 1 hour before they're up. But if I can get up even earlier, that's like the best. But I try to get up a little bit before the kids are up so that I can have some personal time. And then I also try to create 1 hour of quiet time in the middle of the day. And then I also try to have 1 to 2 hours in the evening for personal self-care as well, and connecting with my husband too, before going to bed. And of course, I also try to prioritize my sleep. But in the morning hour, I like to exercise. So exercise is one of those things that fills my bucket. And something else that I feel is important to me is to get ready for the day. So that includes like a quick shower and getting dressed and putting on my makeup. Even if it's just a little bit, it helps me start my day. I am also a person of faith, so I like to spend some time meditating and praying. And then a bonus is I like to multitask with an audiobook or a podcast. So if I'm exercising, I like to listen to podcasts, things that uplift me. So I'm kind of doing 2 things at once. And then during quiet time, that quiet time hour, I use that time for my creativity and my personal projects. So for me, that includes photography, working on pictures. Like I like to use Photoshop, and I like to use Lightroom on my computer. And I also am making family yearbooks on my computer. So I take all my pictures and I turn them into books. So I try really hard to spend some time doing that a little bit every day. And then in the evening hour, I might continue my creativity projects, or sometimes I'm just so tired at the end of the day, which I'm sure all of you can relate to being exhausted at the end of the day. And when you're, parenting and putting your whole heart into that. So at the end of the day, if I'm super tired, I sometimes will wind down with a book or a show. But sometimes I also like to study scripture or journal. and then try to get to bed at a reasonable time. I used to be a night owl, and I kind of am by nature, but I've learned that if I go to bed way too late, then I'm not, you know, on my A game with my kids the next day. I also like to try to have some days of the week that I always do, like, for example, the laundry. Like, I try to have one day a week that I do the laundry, one day a week that I do some cleaning, one day a week that I do my meal planning and my groceries. And I also try to include, of course, spending time with family and extended family and friends, and serving. Because I think when we serve others and do something kind for someone else, that fills our bucket, you know, like forgetting ourselves for a minute and going out and doing something kind for a friend or a neighbor. That I try to prioritize that at least weekly as well. And of course, the majority of my energy goes to my kids, but it's so important to have those few times of the day where you can, you know, do something for yourself, something that fills your bucket. Self-care for me also includes limiting social media. I actually love social media because I love people and I love connecting and I love photography. But I have been in a place where I have spent too much time on social media, and it does the opposite. It doesn't fill my bucket. And so I like to be creating more than I consume. Something else that might also look like self-care. I totally believe in seeking medical or professional help if we need it. I believe in counseling or therapy or medication or whatever we might need to take care of our bodies and our minds. Also, maybe sometimes it's good to hire a babysitter and just go run an errand. You know, go on a date with your partner. I think that getting a babysitter is helpful too. And also supporting our partners in their self-care. My husband is really good at this. He is really good at taking the kids out for a drive or taking them on a walk so that I can have a little bit of quiet time. And I try to do that for him too. If he has on a Saturday, I say, go and do something on your to-do list, you know. So when I take care of myself, I'm naturally a better parent. And so before I transition over to talking about positive parenting, I'll say that even without reading any parenting books or following any parenting advice, when we take care of ourselves, I think we're just naturally a better and happier parent. So that's all I have on self-care. And if anyone has questions, I would be glad to chat and open the discussion.
Bethany, do you also cooking meals for kids?
Yes, I do. I feed them breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I usually make breakfast and lunch really simple. And then I make dinner probably 4 times a week. And then we do leftovers some nights, or we'll order a pizza or order food the other night. So we do a lot of leftovers, but yes, I do make dinners.
Another question, what's on your Happy Moms card? Can you read it to us?
Sure. Okay, so this is the ideal goal, and it doesn't always go this way, but this is what I strive for. So 6 a.m. is my workout. 7 a.m. is my shower and get ready for the day. And 8 a.m. is breakfast and help the kids and feed the kids breakfast. And I try to check my to-do list, sometimes I'll start laundry. And then at 9 a.m. is when we do our homeschooling right now. So this is our quarantine routine. So we do our homeschool starting at 9 a.m. And then at 12 o'clock, we'll have lunch. And then at 1 o'clock is my toddler's nap time. Excuse me. And ideally I would like to have my quiet time and my creativity time at that time. But lately during quarantine, we've had to do more homeschool in the afternoon. So I've actually had to give up a lot of my personal creative time to do homeschooling with the kids. And then usually my toddler wakes up at 3 o'clock. So we just play around 3 or 4. And then 5 o'clock is make dinner and then clean the kitchen. And then kids' bedtime. We start bedtime around 6:37. And it's really hard to get the kids in bed. So we're not always done with bedtime. It kind of staggers. We get one kid down at 7:30, one kid down at 8, one kid down at 8:30, and one kid down at 9. And then my nightly routine at 9 o'clock, I wash my face, I brush my teeth, I read, I might watch a show or connect with my husband or do some creative things. And then I try to be in bed by 10:30 or 11.
What kind of exercise do you do in the morning? I'm curious, like 1 hour.
Oh, that's a good question. So I have a stationary bike in my basement. So I ride my stationary bike for 20 minutes to 30 minutes. And then I do some, maybe like 10 minutes of yoga, and then maybe 15 minutes of circuit training, like weights. I'm not very strong, but but overall it's about a 45-minute workout. But if I don't start early enough, I have to shorten it. And if the weather's good, I'll go run outside. Colorado can get really, really cold. So a lot of the year, it's too cold. But I love to run outside, and so that's something I'll do if it's warm outside.
There's a question, how you arrange the kids, manage the bedtime with the 4 kids, like you just mentioned, like 6:30, 7:30, 7:1, 7:30, 8, 8:30. So every kids you read to them. For example, you take off one, what is the other 3 was working on doing?
Okay, so my toddler, I usually do kind of his bath and his reading just with him. Because the other kids are playing and they're still getting their pajamas on and they're brushing their teeth and they're putting their toys away. And so I'll put the baby to bed first. And then I'll read to my 2 daughters who are 8 and 5. And so they'll go to bed at the same time. And I read to both of them. Sometimes my husband does it too. Like if I'm putting my toddler to bed, he'll put the girls to bed, so that if we can tag team it, it goes a lot faster. And we read to them after they've put their PJs on and brushed their teeth, and then they we sing them a song. And then if they're not tired enough, we sometimes tell them that they can read quietly in their room, but neither of them are quite, they're not like super good readers yet, so they really just look at the pictures. But they'll sometimes just read in their beds until they fall asleep. But that's how we do that. And then my son, Noah, he is 10 and he's just naturally a night owl. So we kind of let him have quiet time in his room, and he loves to be read to because we've read to him his whole life. So even though he's 10, we're trying to encourage him to do more reading on his own, but he still likes us to read chapter books to him. So my husband's been reading chapter books to him. But yeah, and then it's so funny because he's 10, but he still likes me to sing to him. And for a while I was kind of fighting it, and I was like, Noah, I can't, you just got to go to bed. Like, I'm so tired. And so, so he knows that if he goes to bed after 9, he may not get the chance for me to sing to him. He just has to put himself to bed. But we try to condense it and make it quick, but it does take time to do, each of those little kids. And I think it's good. It's kind of like a good time to bond with the kids, even if it's just for a few minutes. Like, it's kind of a good little bonding time at night. But it is a hard time because you're so tired.
And so each kids you were singing to them, like first the toddler, then your daughters, then your son. You read, singing. Wow, amazing.
There's a couple more questions in the chat too, by the way.
Okay.
One of them is, how are your kids getting along with each other? That's one of them. And then how do you do when your kids do not listen to you?
So I will say, I'll talk more about what to do when the kids are not listening. And I'll talk more about that when we talk about positive parenting. But the kids, they get along pretty well. My oldest, Noah, he's 10, and my daughter, Lucy, who's 8, they're the ones that they clash the most. They get in the most little sibling rivalry or little fights, you know. It's not too bad, but they are the ones that are the tough ones, you know. But overall, they get along really well and they play really well together. And during quarantine, they've actually been bonding and they've become closer because they haven't been able to play with their friends. And so they've had a lot more quality time together, and they play outside together, or they play in the basement together, or they'll do crafts together. My girls, who are 8 and 5, I feel really lucky and really blessed that they get along really well, because I know that some siblings just don't naturally get along, but so far they get along really, really well. And everybody loves the baby, so there's no problems with that. But we can talk more about positive parenting in a minute if there are no more questions. But I'd be happy to take any more questions on that.
Yeah, I think you can go ahead and talk about parenting. We don't have much time.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. And I just got one message that I'll answer. And my husband, he does help with the housework as much as he can. He works from about 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Sometimes a little earlier, sometimes a little later. But when he gets off work, he is helpful, and he helps with the kids, and he'll help clean the kitchen. And we try to tag team. Like if I'm cleaning the kitchen, he'll help put the kids to bed, or if I'm putting the kids to bed, he'll help clean the kitchen. So I feel really lucky that he is helpful. So let's talk a little bit about positive parenting and what that looks like in my home and what I've learned about it. I'm sure you all know that there are a lot of different parenting books and a lot of different parenting styles and methods out there. But when I first began to learn about positive parenting, it just felt right in my heart. And I knew that it would be effective. And so I wanted to try it out and practice it. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's very gradual and very slow, but it is a really cool, it's a really cool practice. So, and I believe that if we take a little bit of time to learn about positive parenting and human development, we can be inspired as parents to make choices for our family, and we might feel motivated to be a better mom. And that's what parenting education does for me. I don't feel like I have to follow all the advice, because it's a lot sometimes. And I don't feel like we have to live by the book all the time, because sometimes we just have to follow our heart and follow our gut when we're raising our kids, because we do know best sometimes. But learning about positive parenting has given me so many really awesome ideas that I may not have thought of on my own. And it inspires me to do things in the really difficult moments. Because, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure you all feel this way, but I just don't want to mess up my kids. And yes, I will mess up. I will make mistakes, and I make mistakes every day. But I feel that educating myself about positive parenting has changed the way that I think. And it's inspired me to change my behavior and how to implement things in my family so that I can create a joyful environment that I want in our home. And that's the best part of positive parenting, is that we have the power to create the environment that we want in our home. We're not going to be able to control our kids. And I think we all have a little bit of that controlling personality. Like, we just want our kids to do what we want them to do. But they're their own person and their own little, human. And so we can't always control them, and we shouldn't try to always control them, but we can control our own behavior and our own actions. And then it naturally teaches our kids and it influences them to be better and to do better. And so positive parenting, to me, it means that we have more positive interactions than negative. It means turning the negative around. It means looking for the good. And it means focusing on what is good in our kids and what is good in the moment. And it means reinforcing the good behavior and not reinforcing the negative behavior. So I'll just tell you a few examples, and you can jot down any questions that you might have. And these are some positive parenting tools that I have learned and practiced as a mom. And the first I kind of briefly mentioned, and that is to model good behavior. Kids are, they should be allowed to act their age. But we also should be acting our age as adults. So for me, that means staying calm when our kids are screaming. It means being a safe person for them and creating a safe place for them to be themselves and to express their emotions. I think just like we sometimes want to express our emotions, we should allow our kids to express theirs. It means not shouting and yelling all the time. And it means, as a parent, saying please and thank you, and even saying I'm sorry. Number two, positive parenting, the second positive parenting tool. I feel like I have learned how to stop yelling, or how to stop using a harsh or shameful tone. I really do believe that there is a better way to solve problems than raising our voice. And I believe that it's possible to parent effectively without yelling. I think we've all done it. It's okay. I've totally raised my voice, just to be honest with you. But it's, the more you practice, the better you get. I think that yelling teaches our kids not to respond to you until you are yelling. So it takes some time to teach your kids that you aren't going to yell. But once you stopped yelling for a few days, they start to notice and they start to listen to you. They will start to listen to you even when you are using a nice voice. And so instead of yelling, what I try to do is I try to get close to my child, and I try to get on their level and look them in the eyes and smile, and I say what I want to say that way. Another funny thing that I've done is, instead of yelling when I really need their attention, I'll actually try just singing what I want to say, because sometimes the noise is so much and the chaos is so much that I'll just start singing what I want to say. And then they totally stop and they listen. Even if they're not looking at me, they're listening. And they hear the lyrics that I'm singing, that I'm just making up, and they're silly. And they usually calm down, and then they're more softened and more willing to comply. In instances that I'm really upset or frustrated, I try to take a deep breath. And sometimes I need to remove myself from the situation if needed. And I tell my kids that I'll be back when I feel better, and then we can talk later. Or if I do yell or I do overreact, sometimes I walk away and I leave the situation without saying anything, and then I come back later to apologize to my kids. The third tool is how to ignore. I've learned how to ignore inconsequential behavior and how to praise the good in my kids. So I think so much of what our kids do, if it's not consequential, and what we pay attention to will grow. And so our kids are driven to seek for our attention. They don't even realize that they want it, but they do, because we as their parents are their superstar. My husband will say that I'm like a celebrity to my kids, you know? And so when we give attention to like the annoying little things, such as whining or a messy room or harmless sibling rivalry where nobody's in any danger, if we give attention to those little things all the time, they're not going to go away, because they're only going to grow because we're giving attention to it, you know? And so I learned that I didn't need to get involved in every little argument that my kids had. I learned that I didn't need to fix all the problems in our home. And when I learned that, it was like, I felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. Like I didn't have to be the hero. I didn't have to solve all the problems. I could allow my kids to be annoying. I could allow them to be, you know, whine. I can let them whine. I can let them sometimes even work out their little arguments with each other, as long as they're not harming each other. And allowing them to do that without giving them attention was a weight lifted off my shoulders. I think that we're allowed to ignore those little harmless, annoying things that our kids do. Now, I'm not saying that we need to ignore the children and make them feel invisible. We definitely want to acknowledge our children, but we can ignore the behavior. We can ignore the little things and let them work through their own struggles and problems. And they will learn more because they'll have natural consequences. For example, if my daughter pinches my other daughter in the arm, instead of me getting involved, there will be natural consequences. Like my other daughter might cry, or she might pinch her back, or for example, if they don't eat the breakfast that I made for them, they will naturally get hungry. So there are natural consequences to their choices, and I don't have to fix every little thing. Number 4, the next tool is responding to consequential behavior. So positive parenting will teach you that consequential behavior should be a really small percentage compared to the inconsequential behavior. But we as parents get to choose what is consequential. And so, for example, in my home, consequential behavior might be, well, it's like bullying is consequential in our home, or inappropriate language would be consequential, or physical harm to another person. So those are 3 consequential behaviors. Now, my kids are in a good place. They don't use bad language. Very little physical harm happens, but sometimes there is a little bit of bullying that happens just because they're learning how to be a social person. And so my kids understand that that is a boundary in our home. They know that it's not allowed to be a bully. And so if it happens repeatedly, then there is a consequence. So for example, if my son is bullying his sister, usually it's harmless, but if I feel that it's going a little bit beyond harmless, then his consequence might be that he will lose his allotted screen time. He gets 2 hours of screen time and he can lose that, and that would be a consequence. There's another tool that works for consequential behavior, and it's called stop, redirect, and reinforce. So you can ask your child to stop, and then you redirect their attention instead of yelling and going crazy, and teach them what they can do. And then you reinforce the good behavior by complimenting them. So here's an example. So when my oldest son was a toddler, he went through a phase where he hit other kids. And this is actually very typical age appropriate behavior for a toddler because they're still learning how to control their emotions. But what I would do is I would ask if he were to hit a kid at the park, I would immediately tell him to stop. And then I would redirect him by teaching him what he can do, because he didn't know what he didn't know what else to do. He was only 2. And so instead I would teach him, when you're angry or upset, you can control your hands. And so I would say, let's try this. Put your hands on your tummy instead. And so we would put our hands up and say, we can control our hands. And then we'd put our hands on our tummy. And then I would model good behavior by apologizing to the child. Like, I don't necessarily have to force my child to apologize. Instead, I can model the good behavior by apologizing and saying, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? And would you like to play with us? And then after that, when my son would behave well, I would praise him for his good behavior. So I'd say, good job, buddy. You're playing so well. And that reinforces the good behavior so that the good behavior will keep growing. The 5th example is looking for the good. So I believe that even when things are chaotic, and if someone is throwing a tantrum, or the kids are fighting, or they're not eating the dinner you made them, I believe that you can find something good and you can say it out loud. So rather than focusing on the negative, you can find something positive. So for example, when the kids are fighting in the car, I might say, oh, it's such a beautiful day outside. Or if one kid is not sitting in their seat during dinner and they're just messing around, instead of focusing on the kid that's not sitting in their seat, I would rather focus my attention on the kid that is sitting in their seat. And I would say, oh, Penny, thank you so much for sitting so nicely in your chair and eating your dinner. And because I focused on the positive, the kid that wasn't behaving well will usually try and fix their behavior and sit well in their seat. Looking for the good also means loving your kids and focusing on their strengths, even when you see their weaknesses and their mistakes. So for example, if one of my kids gets on my nerves, I have to practice showing them more love and focusing on the good and amazing things about them. There's also a few more, and I'll just rush through these. Seeing the world through your kids' eyes, remembering that they are small and I am big. When my kids look up at me, what do I want them to see? Do I want them to feel like I am a tall, scary, emotional, reactive mommy? Or do I want them to look up at me and see a happy and smiling, confident and loving and patient mommy? Trying to remember that their brains are still developing and they don't have the same decision-making skills or the patience that we have as adults. For example, when sometimes if I take a toddler to the store and it goes a little long and it goes into their lunchtime or their nap time, and then they start to get fussy and they start misbehaving, ultimately that was my mistake, you know. So instead of getting mad at the child for misbehaving, I might say, honey, I'm so sorry this is taking so long. I'm almost done. As soon as we're done, we'll get a snack and we'll go home. Are you so excited? You know, so changing your momentum into positivity. Also teaching our kids morals and values and boundaries. I think the best time to teach our kids is when we're calm. And also I love having family meetings. Sometimes if you want to teach a new rule or something, or you want to teach a moral or a value, have a family meeting, get together and sit down and say, we're going to have a family meeting, and we're going to pop popcorn and we're going to talk about some things. And the kids love that. And when you make it kind of like a fun meeting, they learn so much better. I also like to give my kids choices. Like if they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing, or like, for example, my toddler was sitting on the stairs while I was vacuuming the stairs. And instead of, you know, saying, you got to move, you got to move. I turned off the vacuum and I gave him choices. I said, would you like to sit on this stair or would you like to sit on this chair, you know? And so then it gives them a choice. So then they feel like they have some power. Or like if I want my kids to turn off the TV, I would say, yay, it's time to take a screen break. It's time to move our bodies. Would you like to play outside or would you like to do some coloring? You know, so I gave them two choices and it gives them the power to choose, and then they don't feel like they're being forced. Another thing I love is one-on-one time with our kids. I think that even when we spend just a few minutes with each individual kid, it can reduce stress and anxiety, and it can reduce sibling rivalry. Positive parenting has also taught me to be more playful and silly with my kids. It's taught me to reach into my inner child and not be so uptight as a grown-up. Sometimes we do have to be the grown-up, but it's also good to be silly with them too. I've also learned how to say more yeses and less nos. For example, Mom, can I watch a movie? Yes, you can watch a movie after you clean up your toys. So instead of saying, no, you can't watch a movie, you have to clean up your toys, I turned it into a yes after you clean up your toys. Anyway, and I think positive reinforcement means giving your kids rewards for good behavior, and it doesn't have to be a big reward. The rewards can be really simple. They can be a pat on the back or a wink or a hand squeeze or a kiss on the cheek or a thank you, or just noticing their good behavior and reinforcing that. I view it as something that's not, it shouldn't feel overwhelming, but instead it should feel freeing and liberating. Positive parenting allows me to focus on my behavior and not my child's behavior. And hopefully their behavior will follow my example. And my last thought on that is that think of someone in your life who loves you no matter what, who is your safe place. Maybe they are even the nicest person you know. They make you feel better when you are around them. Be that person for your kids. My resources that I want to share. So I've learned most of my positive parenting from Ralphie Jacobs of Simply on Purpose. So Ralphie Jacobs of Simply on Purpose, her website is simplyonpurpose.org, and her Instagram account is @simplyonpurpose. And she has so many great free content, on her Instagram stories in her little highlight bubbles. But she also has an audio course. So if you love what you learn from her and you want more, you can go on her website and purchase an audio course, and it's so good. She also has coaching calls that you can purchase. And she also does in-person workshops when we're not in quarantine. A book that I recommend is called, it's right here, it's called Parenting with Love, Making a Difference in a Day. It's by Glenn Latham, and it's not very long. It's oh my goodness, it's like a quick read. It's less than 100 pages long, and it's only like, it's less than $9 on Amazon. So this is a really good, inexpensive, quick read on positive parenting. And then my last recommendation is a podcast, and it's my favorite parenting podcast, and it's called 3 in 30 Takeaways for Moms. And it's hosted by a friend of mine named Rachel Nielsen, and she gives actionable parenting tools in 30 minutes. And she has the best guests. So that podcast is 3 in 30 Takeaways for Moms. And those are my 3 best parenting resources. So that is what I have to say about positive parenting. Any questions?
Thank you so much. I just have one question. I know it's getting late. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So my biggest question is, I want you to comment on the trade-off of having multiple kids. Like I have my son, and my husband is very helpful, but both of us are working. We are doing our best, and at the end of every day, we feel exhausted, right? And so, and I think both our time and which I just can't see. We have 2 kids and still provide the same quality parenting as we are doing right now. And my current feel is we are so lucky to have our son, and we should do our best job, right? We shouldn't sacrifice his education, his parenting, in hope of what we want to have more kids, because I kind of not sure whether we qualify. We are yeah, we can providing that. So I wonder what's your thought? And also I think very practically on financial side, right? It just I think it's very practical that if we have multiple kids, they won't be able to go to private school, right? And you know, California's public system, right? And we're not in a good school, like a district, all that. So it's very practical. And I just want you to comment on that.
Yes. Did you say you have 2 kids, or you just have one?
I only have
okay.
one. And I'm hesitant to have my second. Yeah.
I know it's so true. It's actually really nerve-wracking to think about adding another kid to your family, because that first one is such a unique learning curve, and you bond with that baby and you love that baby so much, and you give all your time and energy and resources and finances to the baby. And so it is very overwhelming to have another one. I totally agree. We just knew, you know, personally, we just knew that we knew we wanted 4, because we both came from families that had 4. And we kind of knew that we wanted our kids to have siblings, but that doesn't mean you have to by any means. You know, you need to follow your heart and your gut. But once you have your second child, you realize that your heart grows, and that suddenly you have room in your heart and in your home for that second child. And it does look different, because you're not able to give your first child as much attention as you used to, but it's okay. It turns out okay, because the first child learns so much from having to share mommy and daddy. And it does take some effort to give the first child some one-on-one time. I think that any time that I had another baby, I had to go out of my way to create one-on-one time with the other kids. And so yes, it's a huge sacrifice. You have to use your time with each kid. So so when I had my second baby and the baby would go for a nap, I would spend time with my first son. And then when I had my third baby, the amazing thing with my third was that the 2 big kids would play together. So they had like a playmate, you know? And yeah, and my son, each time I had a baby, the older one was usually really happy, and they didn't really have any like sadness or rivalry. They were just excited to meet the baby, because we went out of our way to include the older child, to make sure the older child felt super loved, and like they still had all of our love, you know, like, you know, it didn't diminish how important they were to us. And yes, I agree, it is expensive, because each child, you might want to get them into sports, or you know, those things are expensive. And so my kind of philosophy is that our kids will each always get to have like one sport and one instrument, you know. So like my son does piano lessons and soccer, or, you know, so each kid will have like, you know, 2 extracurricular things rather than like 5 things. So we try to balance it out that way. It's hard.
Yeah, just follow-up question. Could you give example of how to make the older kids make sure feel loved within the new coming baby?
That's a good question. when my son came into the hospital room to meet the baby, actually my second daughter was born premature, so she was in the NICU. So when my son came into the room, he was 2, and we were just so excited to see him, and we just gave him the biggest hugs. And then we said, "You're a big brother," and we told him how important it was that he was going into this new role. Like, you're going to be a big brother, and your sister's going to look up to you. And but we also didn't try to like, we didn't try to like talk too much about the baby. We'd try to say, well, tell me about you, and tell me about your day, and what book do you want to read? So I think giving one-on-one time to the older child is key. Like, giving one-on-one time to him made him feel important. And so as long as you're doing that, even if it's just in little chunks, they will feel important. And giving him a job, like sometimes we'd ask him to help with the baby, or can you bring me a diaper, or can you bring me her blankie, or can you sing her a song? Those things, making him feel important and loved. It's just going that little extra mile, I think. Thank you so much for your question.
Thank you. Anyone has more questions?
Hi, Bethany, can you hear me? I have one question. Yeah, it's a really awesome talk. Happy on really good time. We all keep busy at home now. My question is, do you sometimes have some bad mood, and what do you do when you are in very bad mood, and will that affect your kids?
That is such a great question, because we do have bad moods. And I think especially as women, we just sometimes have bad days. And so the short answer would be that sometimes, even if I'm in a bad mood, I can still control my behavior. So I might not be feeling good in my heart or in my head, but I can still use good words, and I can still try to be positive. And I don't think that that's being, what's the word? It doesn't mean I'm not being authentic. Like, I can actually voice to my kids and say, Mommy's having a really hard day today. I don't feel very good, but I still love you. I'm just gonna go lay down for 10 minutes. Or I want, I don't know, I think it's okay to voice how we're feeling without overreacting or yelling, or I don't think we have to be mean just because we're in a bad mood. But those days happen, and sometimes they happen in a streak. Like, it'll be like a streak of bad days. It's not just one bad day. It'll be like 3 or 4 bad days, and then the 5th day you're like, oh, I feel so much better today. So even when I do my self-care and my daily routine, there are still bad days. And so I just try my best, and I definitely make mistakes, and I apologize for my mistakes. And I try to end the day on a good note, but if I don't, I just try harder the next day. And we just keep trying. I think we're human, and we're all going to have bad days. And hopefully the good days will they'll outweigh the bad days. And I think they do. I think overall, our kids, when they look back, they remember the good. If we're trying, and we're just, trying to create happy memories, and we're just trying our best to be patient, I think that we'll look back and remember the good. And maybe you feel that way about your own parents. Like, I know I had such awesome parents. You met my dad, and I have a wonderful mom, and I know that they made mistakes, but I don't really remember all the mistakes. I mostly remember the good. And so I hope, that even on the bad days, my kids, they're so forgiving. Kids are so forgiving, and they're so resilient, and they love you no matter what. And so I think that the good days do outweigh the bad days.
Thank you, thank you. I guess the kids sometimes they doing better than we can imagine. They do understand. Mommy has some mode.
Yes,
Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
There's one more question. How do you do when your kids don't listen to you?
That's a good question. Oh, so that's a good question. I think that if we are practicing positive parenting and we're trying our best to stay calm and patient, that they will, I do feel like my kids usually hear me. They hear me, but they don't always want to comply. And so I think sometimes allowing them to make that mistake is okay sometimes. Like yeah, that's tough, because if my kids if they don't do what I say, is what I'm saying really important? Is what I'm saying, like, it depends on if it's a consequential or inconsequential behavior. Like if my son is on his video games and it's time for him to get off, he actually knows the expectation, and so he's usually really good about getting off. But if he didn't, there might be a consequence. Oh, that's so tough. I think our kids are, we have to give them a little credit, and sometimes we have to allow them to make mistakes. And so sometimes if my kids decide that they're not going to clean up the toys when I ask them to, sometimes I let it go. Sometimes I say, you know what, I'm not willing to fight this. I'm not willing to put my energy into fighting them right now. Like, I'm just going to let them go to bed and we'll clean it up tomorrow. So I think that if I'm putting too much energy and like frustration into something, I ask myself, is this really a big deal? Is this really important right now? But I don't have teenagers yet, so I'm sure that things are going to get a lot more interesting when my kids are a little older. And my 10-year-old is already showing signs of the preteen, and it is really frustrating. It's really hard. But I think that if we just keep trying our best and showing patience and love and all those things, then in the long run, it'll pay off, and they'll choose to make good choices, and they'll choose to listen.
And you will keep learning as parents, as a mom. So when your Nova become a teenager, you already learn a lot of tools in your pocket, so you can help them, right?
Yes, I hope so. I'm a little nervous. I used to think I would be so excited to have teenagers because I actually really love teenagers, but I am worried about having teenagers now because I'm seeing that it's a lot different when they're your own kids. So I think I'll probably be reading more books then, and just trying my best is going to be hard.
Oh, this is so good. And we already passed 10 minutes. Jim, do you want to say something? I believe as a father, first time you hear Bethany talk this much about her parenting skills. That definitely have your influence. Jim, can you give us?
Sure. Yeah, I know we're out of time. I just want to say that Bethany was right. Like, her mother was amazing in raising the kids. She was doing positive parenting before it was even a thing. And I love her for that, because for me, I kind of like struggled. I grew up in a good family, and my wife grew up in a good family. And I think that's where the traditions come from. And we kind of naturally grew up in a positive family environment. And that's really what positive parenting is really all about. And the more you can make it positive, and the more that you can make it loving, and the more that you can have, singing time together, like you talked about, Bethany, and prayer time together, and just, I think that good things will come. There's always going to be those little bad times, those little rough times, and And raising Bethany and my daughters, I could say a lot of positive things about it, but there was always those little rough times. But my wife was the best example of how to bring kids through difficult times. And I know that Bethany's picked up on that. So thank you, Bethany, for such a wonderful presentation. You're right, Catherine. I mean, there was so much wisdom that came out of her that I haven't heard. And now I know why she does such a great job. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
great.
you.
Bethany, thank you so much. You are beautiful inside out. I just
Thank you.
enjoy to see you on the screen. You look so beautiful. You are talking about the beautiful things inside your brain. And I feel like we have a delicious dinner inside.
Oh, you are so kind. I at the beginning of the meeting, I wanted to cry. I felt so overwhelmed with gratitude and love for all of you, even though I've never met you. And I wanted to answer this last question. Someone said, what do you do to catch up if you're behind with your self-care? Like if you didn't get enough sleep or didn't get a workout? I think that the answer to that is just to forgive yourself. And it's okay. Like there are days where I get frustrated that I didn't get my workout or I'm behind on sleep, but that's okay. Like just forgiving ourselves and loving ourselves anyway, and saying that it's okay, it wasn't my best day and we can try again tomorrow. And so I hope that you'll all remember that you are wonderful and you're amazing and you're meant to be the mother or the father to your children. And so just keep trying and forgive yourself when you make mistakes and keep learning and keep loving your kids.
Thank you again, Bethany. And this is a great gift to give to our community. I'm going to have the recording and upload to YouTube, let you to view it, and then save for more people to learn from you.
You are so sweet.
Much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Love to all of you.
Everyone.
So much. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks all my audience. Thanks all the people from my community for taking the time to listen such a wonderful talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Bye-bye.
Cute. I loved seeing all the kids. They're so cute. Bye.
Please. Hello.
Hello. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Thank you so much, Bethany. It's so helpful.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine.
I have twins. Yeah, so it's a little tough. Yeah, and I'm a single mom too.
Oh, all my love to you. My heart goes out to you.
Oh,
Your kids are so cute. They're darling.
They're so cute.
Thank you. So luckily right now my parents are here to help me. Yeah, otherwise I wouldn't think about, how the quarantine time would be, because sometimes
she's also working full-time job.
Yeah, I need to work at night sometimes, because we have deadline coming up. And so some of the time my kids won't go to sleep. They will just go to the closet. I put up a desk over there. Yeah, they just willing to sleep on the floor.
Oh, I'm so glad you have help. That's so wonderful.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim.
Bye.
You're welcome.
So
Thank
proud
you,
of you
Catherine.
and Bethany.
Thank you, Catherine.
Bye.
We'll be in touch soon.
Yeah, we will.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.